Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Hussein Mahadi, and I'm a moderator for this session. Kindly indicate if you can hear me clearly.
Yes, yes, I can hear you.
All right, thank you very much. As we all know, today is the fifth week of Jiipcc Mentorship and Internship Program, and today we are having a combined class of artificial intelligence mentees, IP, fintech, um, data protection, health tech and law, and the energy industry mentees. Those are like 6 courses. So those are like 6 courses, and we have 5 mentors with us today on the program. And the topic for today is rising capital and developing effective business negotiation skills. Quickly, I'll be skipping the announcements for today, and I'll be moving straight to reading our mentors profile for today. Okay, our first mentor for today is sorry, my voice was echoing. So our first mentor for today is Teresa Chikwendu. Can we still hear me?
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Teresa Chikwendu is a technology and communication sector specialist and has over the years supported in the delivery of private and public sector technology and communication projects. As a senior manager at MTN Nigeria, she helps the company structure and negotiate its most complex commercial transactions, ranging from capital market, financing, merger and acquisition, and project finance transactions. She also supports the business team in drafting and negotiating mobile network procurements and business process outsourcing contracts. In addition to her expertise in telecoms, Teresa is also an expert in corporate law, having served as legal counsel and partner to several companies in the financial and telecom sector, both in Nigeria and abroad. Teresa is an award-winning Harvard-trained lawyer who has worked on market-defining transactions, bringing to the fore a commercial mindset. So kindly join me in welcoming our mentor for today, Teresa Chikwendu. She's our first mentor. Our second mentor for today is Mary T. Otumba. Mary is a financial analyst at EY, a big four consulting firm in Nigeria with over 6 years of extensive experience in revenue assurance, due diligence, project finance, and financial advisory, engaging projects across financial service industry. Prior to joining EY, Mary began her career at KPMG and gained experience in the fintech industry and Anderson. Mary is an award-winning first-class honor from Caleb University and is a chartered accountant. She is a prolific writer, and her article on ESG featured on Business Day and Mondak.com was recognized as top 3 Thoughtful Leadership Environment Award. She is a personal and career development advocate, and in 2022, she co-founded Skill Club, a one-stop resource bank for personal development, career advancement, and upskilling resources. Since inception, Skill Club has impacted over 2,000 followers via webinars, spotlight series, and newsletters. She is currently on the advisory board of a fintech and health tech startup. Mary's insightful content on LinkedIn has gained recognition, assisting her followers to reach with job referrals and profile reviews. Some of her media features include Business Day, Punch newspaper, Legit.ng, mondak.com, Rethinking Economics International, UK, and more. Mary is passionate about impact and enjoys writing public speaking. Thank you very much for joining us today, Mary Otumba. She's our second mentor for today. Our third mentor for today is Esther Eme. Esther Eme is a finance professional holding 2 master's degrees in finance and investment with specialization in merger and acquisition and private equity from prestigious institution, Geneva Business School and London School of Business and Finance. Her work experience spans across several industries from real estate and constructions to business development and education. She is enthusiastic about the future of finance, having undergone several training boosts certificates in sustainable finance from the United Nations Partnership for Action on Green Economy, investments in emerging markets and developing economies from the World Bank, and professional certification in financial technology from the University of Hong Kong. She is an avid speaker, writer, and advocate for development and inclusion through financial literacy, investments, and technological revolution. She is an alumni of the World Economic Forum Global Shaper Community in Abuja, having served various roles from project lead to manager, finance manager and secretary. She is an active member of her church and community, where she enjoys serving and singing. Thank you very much for joining us today, Miss Esther Eme. Our fourth mentor for today is Mr. Matthew Francis. Matthew Francis has background in finance and technology. He worked in San Francisco at Bank of America, UBS, and Morgan Stanley in the private wealth management division, raising capital and investing assets in the tech space. Mr. Francis worked at Oracle and more recently at Careem in Dubai. He is currently the Chief Strategy and Investment Officer at NowNow Digital System, one of the Africa's top mobile payment platforms based in Nigeria. He is an expert in capital raising and driving corporate strategy and sales. And um, our last mentor for today is Mr. George Onyewuchi. George Onyewuchi currently heads fintech engagement for First Bank and its subsidiaries across Africa at a digital innovation lab, setting up and driving the bank's fintech strategy. George is a link that connects technology, business, and ecosystem partnership. He is at the inception of product partnership and ecosystem building. He has led the tech solution project development for the SME banking business of a leading commercial bank and have taken numerous financial and non-financial products from idea to market and growth. He has led digital transformation in the client engagement processes for leading commercial banks, including one of the Nigerian banking industry's first end-to-end account opening for corporate accounts and SME digital lending. His team has won numerous awards for powering growth of SMEs. He also provides advisory for Crypto.Africa towards developing blockchain infrastructure and building the operating system for African businesses on the blockchain, and hosts knowledge sessions on blockchain application to various industries within the African context. These are 5 mentors for today. Kindly join me in welcoming our mentors on the chat box. I'll be giving it up to any of our mentor that is available. I can see Mr. Matt is available on the call. So we start with Mr. Matt. He's going to be giving us an overview of the topic for today, which is rising capital and effective business negotiation. Mr. Matthew Francis.
Hi, how are you? Hi,
fine,
Hussein,
sir.
how are you?
I'm fine, sir.
Thank you for that really good introduction. Really appreciate it. And great to be on the call with everyone today. So the agenda is to kind of discuss the fundraising landscape. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. You're correct, sir.
Terrific. Okay. So fundraising. So yeah, so the economic environment has shifted within the last year, where I'm speaking specifically to the startup community in the fintech space, specifically with what we're doing at Nana Digital Systems. A year ago, venture capital funds, private equity were basically funding businesses to grow at any cost, right? It was more focused on growth, more so than anything. Now, because of where the economy has shifted, and the recent news with Silicon Valley Bank and several other things, interest rates going up, investors are more focused on companies in the startup world that are profitable, or if they're not profitable, have a clear vision of being profitable within the next 12 to 18 months. So that's kind of where the sentiment has shifted. It's highly competitive in terms of getting investor dollars today, more so than it was a year ago. But there is a lot of dry powder on the sidelines. A lot of institutional investors have cash that they need to deploy within a specific time period. And if they're not deploying that cash, then they have to return it back to their investors. So they are driven to deploy cash, whether it's in their existing portfolio of companies or with new investments. That's a different conversation. But there is cash on the sidelines waiting to be deployed. If for businesses that are not profitable, you need to communicate and articulate to the investor a clear path to profitability. Also, valuations have come down significantly, especially for those companies that have raised capital within the last 3 years. So if the companies that raised money during that period, it's likely that they're looking at potentially having a flat round if they need capital right now, or even sometimes, actually, it's quite often doing a down round, which no one wants to do. There are other alternatives as well in terms of non-dilutive financing. So rather than having an equity investor come into the company and sits on your cap table, you can look at debt solutions that are available, and it's that's a viable alternative, because one, you're not giving away equity. Two, interest rates, although they've crept up to 5%, they're still fairly attractive, especially if you're talking to lenders such as a DFI, which is a decentralized financial institution that has mandates to contribute to economic growth, to support the fintech ecosystem. So they're not loan sharks. They're giving lending at favorable rates. But again, you have to go through the due diligence process with the non-dilutive financing alternatives. And again, they want to see profitability. They want to see a company that has a market-tested product, or if it's a new company, well, non-dilutive financing only focuses on businesses that have products in the market, but they want to see growth. They want to see that the money that they're lending you will return a profit so that you can pay back the loan facility. So I'm just kind of speaking off the cuff here, but that's kind of where we are in the economy. Now Digital Systems, just to get everyone some color in terms of who we are as a company. We were founded 5 years ago in 2018 in Nigeria, and our business was agency banking business. We're doing a pivot now as a company to other areas, such as we're really focusing on the SME space and providing SMEs not only a seamless payment experience, but also digital assets, ERP tools for these businesses to better manage their business. So inventory management, cataloging, payroll if they're a larger SME. And we're also giving the SME the ability to list their goods on the Now marketplace, which sits on the consumer application on our platform. And we have over 1 million consumers on the platform, so they can purchase the goods from the SMEs all within the Now platform. So that's where we are. That's what we're doing in Nigeria. We're also in Angola, and we're repurposing some of our technology on the back end here in the United Arab Emirates, which is where I'm based. But our business, we're not profitable, but we are revenue generating. We did a little over 13 million US revenue last year, and we've raised some capital. We've raised 21 million, all within the last year. So we've been successful, but I wanted to, and part of that, some of it was equity, some of it was a credit facility. So I've got experience with both areas that I kind of covered earlier. But it's a challenge. It's highly competitive. You have to package your story in a way that resonates with where we are economically from a macro standpoint. Also with the with your TAM, like you got to address the market that you're in and how you're going to dominate that market, and where are the revenue dollars going to come from, and articulate a growth plan that will get investors excited. So I have spoken and rambled on here, but I'm happy to answer any questions, or if there's a particular area that you'd like to kind of deep dive further, happy to give my 2 cents. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you very much, Mr. Francis, for that brief introduction. Thank you very much. I'll be calling on our next mentor on the call. I can see Ms. Teresa Chikwendo is on the call.
Hello, good afternoon. Hi, Hussein.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Okay. Thanks a lot, Matt, for that very detailed and practical explanation, about what's going on in the fintech space. It was quite enlightening, even for me, who is not a mentee, how much more the mentees. I understand that there's a different, style of presenting. So I actually have a presentation which I would like to share.
Okay, ma'am.
Okay, can you see my slide?
Yes, you can see your slides now.
Okay, great. Just 1 minute, please. Okay. Does it work better now?
Yes.
Okay, great. So my name is Teresa. I am the Senior Manager Corporate Transactions at MTN. I lead the corporate transactions team. So basically, any contract, legal advisory, core project transaction, we are involved. So that's why I'm taking this from a legal perspective per se, just to give you context, from that space. I'm assuming that majority of the people here are lawyers. So with that context, allow me to dive in. These are core books in negotiation. I typically advise people to try to get one and, study it. It gives you a very interesting perspective, about the theory and the practice of negotiation. And then, this slide is something that is critical, to, the larger picture. whenever you think of negotiation, what comes to mind? Is it a confrontation? Is it a discussion? Is it a business resolution? Is it a checklist? Is it a rapport? Is it an agreement? Is it an ultimatum? Eventually, you know, a negotiation can be what you make out of it. So now let's dive in. I personally think of negotiation as, you know, a fact of life, because in my perspective, you know, in everything that we do, whether you like it or not, you are negotiating. You know, if you're married, you know, you have kids, for instance, you know, you're negotiating with your spouse. Maybe I cook, you do the dishes. With your kids, you're negotiating with them to say, oh, you know, study, do your homework from, you know, so and so time, and then maybe you can get 30 minutes of TV time or 30 minutes to, you know, play your video game. If you are working, you are negotiating with your boss. You know, your boss gives you a deadline, and, you know, maybe you already have competing projects on your table. So you know already that that deadline may not be feasible. So you negotiate with your boss to say, okay, can we work? You know, I mean, I want to do the best quality work. So, you know, how do we negotiate to make sure that, you know, everybody's interest is protected and I give you high quality work? Investors, you know, just like Matt had, you know, alluded to, it's all about, you know, making profit, you know, for your investors. So you are negotiating with them if you're on the board, or if you're in management, to say these and these are the support we need to be able to give you X and Y results. If you're in management, you know, CEO, member of staff, and you have access to the board, you know, the expectation of the board is that you will run the company profitably. So obviously, if that is not working, then, I mean, because we all know that sometimes the business climate in Nigeria at the moment has not been, you know, the best. And I want to believe that most people are aware. So, you know, you're negotiating with your boss, your board members, to say, we have hit X, Y stone. Oh, sorry, we've hit X milestone. And, you know, we are targeting that, you know, within so and so time, you know, we will hit Y and Z matrix. That's just, you know, something like that. So then Michael Wheeler gives us a great definition of negotiation, which I like. He says negotiation is learning, it is adapting and influencing in a strategic environment. And those are keywords that I would advise you as you know, students or young lawyers to take note of. Negotiation is learning about your point of view, as well as the perspective of your counterparty. It is adapting your point of view strategy to the perspective of both yourself and the counterparty to ensure for success. And at the same time, it is influencing, because both parties in this case, I think someone is on mute, so I would appreciate if you could please mute yourself so that you don't distract the presentation. So it is influencing, you know, you're influencing the counterparty, and they are seeking to influence you at the same time in a strategic environment. And all of this leads to great negotiation. Eventually, what is really the essence of negotiation? It is to reach an agreement. Like I said, I'm taking this from a transaction perspective, assuming that, you know, the essence of you entering into the negotiation is to raise capital, enter into contracts, and have a valid agreement that works for both parties. So these are the top 5 nuggets, you know, for effective business negotiation. And I'll just run through the presentation, just, you know, in the interest of time. The first is to develop a strategy. Like I said earlier, when you want to negotiate, you want to gather important information, both about your point of view and about the perspective of your counterpart. That is the only way, you know, you'd be able to have success. If you don't know what is important to them, and they are not clear on what is important to you, you know, you will not be able to achieve your goal. In the end, it becomes a wasted effort. You want to also prioritize. So tied to that is about knowing your objective and knowing your goals. So what's the objective of this negotiation? For example, you know, you want to sign the agreement, but what's the objective of the agreement? Maybe your company needs, let's say HP, for instance, to deliver 100 laptops. So what's your goal? Your goal is to get 100 laptops, you know, for your company, so that the company can give to its employees to do their work to achieve business objective. what is the goal of your counterpart? That's the salesperson from HP. The goal is to sell 100 laptops so that they can get, the money and then put that back into their business as profit. When both parties understand their goal and objective, their goal is to sell, your goal is to buy. When both parties are clear, that yes, we're trying to negotiate and we both intend to benefit, then you're having a conversation and you're developing your strategy. It's a simplistic example, but it's the essence of it really is for you to understand the perspective. Again, when you're negotiating, you need to prioritize things that are deal breakers and those that are nice to have. There are certain things that it's a nice to have and some things are critical. So for instance, I always say that you can't negotiate around illegality. So that is obviously a deal breaker. You can't negotiate outside of your company's corporate policies. That is a deal breaker. However, some things can be, like a nice to have. Say, maybe you like certain things in a particular language, or, you're negotiating for some maybe additional benefit. Then it becomes a question of, this is what you want. Can the other party meet that objective? What is critical in every negotiation is the best interest of the business. And honestly, if you don't remember anything about what I've said today, just remember that when you're negotiating, just the way we say in family law, what is in the best interest of the child? When you're negotiating, it always has to be what is in the best interest of the business. These are war stories that I will talk about. In the interest of time, I will punch them as I go along. So my second negotiation nugget is to focus on interest, yours and theirs, and not just positions. So when you're negotiating, let me tell a story. There's this popular story that we hear about in the negotiation world, where two sisters want an orange, and they are trying to think of a way to share it. Some people would say, oh, divide the orange into two, so it's 50-50. But sometimes that doesn't always work. So instead, what do? You ask the sisters, what do you want to do with this orange? One sister wants to use the orange peels to bake. The other one wants to use the juice from the orange for orange juice. So you see that they don't actually have to do 50-50. They can actually get 100-100. In that case, it becomes a win-win because you are now clear on, and both parties are clear on their position. And so bringing it home, one sister can take away 100% of the juice for her orange juice, and the other can take away 100% of the orange peels for her baking. So then it brings it back home to say, what's the essence, of effectively negotiating? If you don't know, you know your interest and those of the counterparty. When you know your interest and you have a sense of the interest of the other party, then it's easier for both of you to work together towards, seeking an alignment. So in that case, it becomes a question of, how do I help you achieve your objective, and how do they help you achieve your objective? I wanted to give one more story here. So I cannot disclose practical things about, what I have handled. So basically, I will speak generally to my experience as a lawyer. So one of the negotiations I was involved in, it had to do with, let's say, company A and company B. That's how I will play it, because for confidential reasons. So company A gives company B, say, access to its software, right? Office tools for business. And company B is actually supposed to make payments in Forex. Unfortunately, we all know what the system is currently, what is currently ongoing in the country. It's quite difficult to repatriate, Forex, as well as, to pay in dollars. And so company A is actually quite upset, that they've given extensions and extensions, and company B is just unable to pay. Company B wants to pay, but unfortunately is not able to source the dollars, to pay company A. So instead, what's happening is that company A is threatening company B to say that, if you don't give us so and so within X, number of days, we will shut down the software. Obviously, if they shut down the software, it's going to be, even if it's for 24 hours, it will be a nightmare, Because what that means is that, employees in company B with wide operations will be unable to work for, even if it was an hour, it will be a crisis. We would term that a business continuity crisis, because that would be a disaster, for want of a better word. So what happens, we get both parties into the room and we explain what is happening, to, 1 minute, please. And we explain what is happening. Apologies for that. And we explain what is happening to company A, because company A is, as you understand, company A is a foreign company. So even though they understand, to them, it's really, they want their monies, So, you get both parties into a room and you try to calm down company A, focusing on the business objective, which is that these people are long-term business partners, and that, after this crisis is over, they will still be in business together. You also focus on the larger good, which is that both parties are, vested in developing, the Nigerian, developing the economy of Nigeria, right? So it will be foolhardy for company A to take any actions that would jeopardize this relationship. And then, you now make commitments that are reasonable in line with current realities. That manages to, so by entering into that room and being able to focus on company A's interest, which is to get paid, company B's interest to pay company A to keep its business going, and at the same time to maintain business relationship, you are able to, manage the situation and, have both parties work towards have both parties, work towards achieving, mutual objectives, because it's in the interest to continue doing business, subsequently. But at the same time, at least you've managed relationship and you've managed the expectations. So now let me go down to our third nugget. I think this is something that is quite critical: emotions. Anytime you're negotiating, because you're in a room and sometimes negotiations tend to get heated up, and so people might say things that they are not supposed to say, in a professional setting, or they may just try to rile you and get you off guard. My question to you is, when someone is doing that to you, how do you react? If someone is trying to just get you off balance and off focus, do you take the bait? If you take the bait, you do yourself and your company a disservice, because you're a professional, and so at all times, regardless, you have to manage your emotions, and you need to also manage the emotions of your reaction to the other party. You can't control how people react to you, but you can control yourself. So when you see someone acting in a certain way, you could take a step back. Sometimes if emotions are heated, parties can say, you know what, why don't we pack this issue? And then you take an issue that is less contentious, and then you come back. So you can say, oh, let's pack issue 1. Usually, from a practical perspective, usually when we are negotiating agreements, there are some clauses like indemnities. Those clauses sometimes are always heated. So what happens is that if you focus on negotiating the indemnity clause with the other party, you might find yourself on it for 30 minutes or more, sometimes an hour, sometimes 2 hours, which is not efficient. So what you do in those cases to say, you know what, why don't we pack this clause that we know will take a lot of time in? Why don't we go for those clauses? Why don't we run through clauses that are less contentious, that we can close, and then the wins from those clauses would then, when everybody is on a high, that, things are moving and progressing positively. When you go into those difficult clauses, you find that parties are a bit more agreeable, to reach a mutual agreement. So take a step back. A practical example. Again, I was negotiating a contract with a foreign party, and it was for a very critical business transaction. They had actually come into the country, for us to negotiate that transaction. True story, I don't recall the exact point of law that was being negotiated. But what I remember is the counterpart, because they were foreigners from, I think, Eastern Europe. I do remember him making a derogatory comment, about maybe the Nigerian education system or something around those lines, and I knew that the essence of that was to actually get me off track. So, what did I do? Because really, like I always say, I could have two options: ignore him and proceed like I didn't hear him, or, be unprofessional and, make a big deal out of it or storm out or something. It was a critical transaction to the business. So, I did the professional thing, which was to, ignore him and continue negotiating. And then as we, we had continued making progress, and then there was another issue, I then schooled him on something that, the Dean of Harvard Law School at that time had said on that issue of law. And then I, mentioned my educational background to him. And then I told him that, you don't make assumptions where people are concerned, so basically schooled him on, the way you act to people. And then thereafter, we had a mutual negotiation. Why do I repeat the story? I repeat the story just to show you that, sometimes your time will come to correct an injustice or a misstatement. It's not every time when someone, say something to rile you in the negotiation that, you just jump to the bit. Sometimes you just take a step back, focus in colloquial terms, I don't know, they would say focus on your focus, so focus on your focus on what you're there to do, which is to negotiate in the best interest of your company. Do that, and then your time will come. So now let me move to the fourth nugget, and I'll try to run through this quickly in the interest of time. Listening is something that is critical, in negotiating, especially as we're now in the virtual world. So in the virtual world, if we were all in the same room negotiating, you will be able to pick cues from my body language. Maybe if I look at, someone on my negotiation team, you'll be able to pick cues, but not everybody's virtual. And so what do? You need to heighten your soft skills, because you need to spend time listening to people. You need to understand what people are saying without them saying it. I mean, I know that it sounds like, one is asking for a lot, but if you continue to work on yourself and train yourself because you want to be the best negotiator that you can be, you would find that, you can do it. And so for this, I'll give you a very simple example. We're negotiating a contract with a banker. My team members from the business team had called me up to negotiate that contract with little or no notice. And for those of you that are in practice, who would come into, who would join us in-house, you will find that happens fairly frequently. So, there was supposed to be a go-to-market, they needed something, and then, we had that meeting. And so in negotiating with the banker, the lawyer for the bank, who, is in-house for the bank, I just noticed that, because I negotiated with him before, I just noticed that he was just, he didn't seem like he was concentrating or even maybe processing what we were discussing, very unlike, we typically negotiate. I think I negotiated with him once or twice before. And so I just asked him that, is everything okay? And that's where when you're negotiating, the other party is not your enemy. You need to sometimes show empathy, because it can buy you favor, both for the current negotiation and for your next negotiation, especially if, again, we're in the same legal industry. You would definitely meet these people at some point in your career. You do not want to be creating, a long line of enemies along the way, or have a reputation, for being, just, I don't want to say mean, but being difficult. So, I just reached out to say, I hope everything is okay on the call, of course, you don't seem like your typical self. And he mentioned to us, which was a very interesting story, that he was currently taking an exam online. He had actually started, But because this was a critical business contract, remember, I told you that I was called out without prior notice and himself as well. So he had started the exam. His business people had called him out of that exam room to negotiate this contract. So, he couldn't concentrate. So I then asked him, how long is the exam? How can we help? And he was like, oh, he will finish it by 7 p.m. I think 7 p.m. or 8, we should just, give him some time. So I said to the team, both to my team and to, him, that, okay, that's fine, fair enough, I can't in good conscience proceed with this negotiation, knowing that, you are personally constrained. I said, well, let's step down this meeting for another 1 or 2 hours. And then let's come back when you're done with your exam. And so you can actually focus. And I tell you, based on that action, I want someone that has become, a friend, such that, our relationship is now mutually beneficial and has benefited both, his company and, my company as well, when there are issues that we need to collaborate on. Because he was very, it's not everyone that would do that. So he was very appreciative of that gesture. And so when we were negotiating the contract, things that were not deal breakers for him, he would let me have them. And vice versa. So we had actually a very, great negotiation experience, or great negotiation, after that. And that was because I was able to listen. So now, my last nugget is, negotiating within time frames. Remember, I mentioned to you that, I got called into, to negotiate based on, the urgency of the business team needing to go to market. What you see when you're negotiating, both in a law firm, in practice, and, in a company, is that everything has to be done, within a time frame. You can't go on a frolic of your own. You can't start a contract this year, abandon it, pick it up next year, May, abandon it, then pick it up. No, it doesn't work like that, in the business world, because really in the end, the negotiations, it all has to do with an objective. If it's an employment contract, it has to do, with, hiring someone. The person is not going to, sit at home waiting for you to make up your mind, when people are competing for talent. It's the same thing, in the procurement space. It's the same thing, in the, the telecom space or the financing space. You can't be negotiating, a financing agreement with the bank, and, you guys are getting close to hitting a deal, and then one party, parties can put a pause or a break, don't get me wrong, but sometimes there would be a reason. Maybe the business environment has changed, and so both parties agree to park the transaction, but not that, you are in active agreement, just, taking, your sweet time. So really, I always say that to be a good negotiator, you need to control the pace, sending constant chasers when necessary, keeping your eyes on the ball, being clear about what's the deadline, both, from your team and from the other party. Sometimes you might have, stay up, negotiate for long hours. Certain times, and usually, in practice, when you join us on this side, for those that are students, you would notice that when, you're negotiating an agreement, the agreement becomes heavily marked up. It becomes a turn off to people looking at it. So what then happens is, you distill the issues and you create an issues list, and then it becomes easier for parties to negotiate. So that's about it from me. Thank you very much. I hope I haven't taken too much of the time. So thank you. If there are any questions, I would be happy to answer it when all the speakers have spoken.
Thank you very much, Mr. Risa Chikwendu, for that very impactful presentation. I also plead with you to share those slides with us, the mentees on the chat box, if you can. Thank you very much. Once again, it's very impactful and educative, and we really enjoyed the presentation. I'll be calling on our next mentor to give her own presentation, Miss Mary T. Otumba.
Hello, everybody. Good afternoon.
Good
And
afternoon.
thanks for having me. Do you want me to put up my video, or it's not necessary? Okay. Okay, so can you see me?
Yes, we can.
So good
We can
afternoon,
see you.
everybody. All right, thank you. Thank you, Teresa, for that presentation. I love it. It was very detailed. So thank you. Thank you, Matt, as well. I don't have a presentation slide, but here, I don't have a presentation slide, but I'm going to share some resources in the course of the presentation. So, I mean, Teresa has said a lot about negotiation already. I just want to, give a bit of, let's say, my 2 cents in addition to what she has said. And I will now speak to pitching, really. So some of the things I think you should consider, or you should be looking into when we are discussing effective business negotiation, is your preparedness. So I was looking at this subject matter from the standpoint of say what's it called, a business person who is seeking for who is looking into who is trying to reach an investor for possible capital raise and all. So that was the standpoint I was looking at it from. So some of the things you want to look into is, number one, preparation, making sure that you have done your research, right, before you go into the room to make negotiation happen. Another thing, I mean, she spoke to active listening. I think that's very key. You want to you want to know what they are saying with their body language, when their tone is not listening to you anymore, right? So you are sure whether you're actually still, in that conversation, right? Or you need to take a different tone or use a different strategy in talking to them. Another thing I think I should talk about is flexibility, and just 2 points, and I go to pitching. Flexibility. So when you're going into a room to negotiate with an investor, for instance, you need to be flexible. You need to have varied options. Never go into the investing room or the negotiation room with just one option. Say, oh, I want to give out, what I have to give is 10% equity, and that's it. I'm not going lower or higher. So you need to have varying options. So what if they say they don't want this? What if they want to go higher? What should be the other things I want to consider to giving them, right? Make sure that you are very flexible, right? Make sure that you can actually, you can reach some level of compromises. And I like how she was able to liken it, with as well with salary negotiation, right? If I want to take up an employment, for instance, there are certain things I want to request for aside my net pay, right? So what are you paying me? What's my net take home? What are the other perks and benefits I'm not aware of, that you want to include in the offer letter? All of the negotiation, right, has to happen. So you need to, understand the place of being flexible and being able to, compromise. Another one, which is the last one for me, is you need to have a closing strategy. So I feel like it's important to know that closing a deal is much more important than even starting it in the first place. So when I reach out to the investor, we have, after the back and forth, this is the rates, this is the percentage I want to give, this is what I want to
I don't know if we can all hear her. I think her network is breaking. If you can hear me, Mary, your network is breaking, so we can't hear you or see you anymore. Okay, I think she's off the call. So I'll call on the next mentor for today. I can see Miss Esther on the call, Esther Eme. Pending when Miss Mary comes back to the call. Okay, she's back. Let's see. You are muted.
So sorry, my network is, MTN is it's not acting nice this place. So I was saying, I don't know if you heard me up until the point of pitching, or let me believe that you heard me. So I want to.
No, we didn't. We didn't hear you. So you just start
Okay.
with. We stopped at where you were talking about closing a contract, a negotiation. You are muted again.
Okay. Yeah, so thank you very much. Yes. So like I said, you need to have a closing strategy, for a deal before you go into the negotiation room at all. So like I said, what I've said on what's it called, effective negotiation skills, and what Teresa have said, I think is enough, right? It's a skill and needs to be learned over time, right? So yes. So let me talk about pitching. Pitching is like, it's your first impression, right? About your product, about your service. It's the first impression you want to give to any investor. So let's say, for instance, you want to cold email an investor on LinkedIn, right? And you already you know how to. I'm also going to talk about how to structure your tests, right, when you're reaching out to people on LinkedIn. But let's just say you have actually attached your pitch deck. The only way they want to have a coffee chat with you or give you an audience, the audience for a second level conversation, is because you have actually come correct in your pitch deck, right? So number one thing you need to be aware of in your pitch deck is you have to be very concise and clear. So as a founder, or as an intending or a potential founder, you need to know your why. You need to be able to answer a question of your problem statement. What is my product looking to solve, right? Or what features am I looking to better? So, and that's the place of understanding, doing a bit of competitors analysis and all of that. So you need to know your why. Why am I going to the market? What am I here to do? Because you have to be very brief, right, in your problem statement, such that it gives me, in quotes, as an investor or as a potential investor, to say, oh, okay, this person understands, is essence, really, right? And I'm willing to take the conversation further. So you need to be able to tell your why in a very concise and clear manner. What are you doing? Why are you pitching? And you need to be able to, request, for a second level conversation. So let's say, for instance, you reach out to somebody on LinkedIn, or it's even an email, right? The normal email we send. It's very simple, very brief. It has to be very brief, right? Your introduction, your body, and your conclusion. Introduction can be as simple as, my name is this. My intent to writing to you is this, right? And then the body is, you're talking about your product, right? What's the aim of your product? What's your product looking to solve? Right? Why are you building that product? And you need to be able to, communicate that in a very concise manner. And lastly is your conclusion, right? Oh, I'm open to discuss this. Oh, is this a product you are interested, or does this interest you in any way? Are you open to a second level conversation? Are you open to a coffee chat, right? It has to be very clear and very concise. So when I go to my DM and I see your message, for instance, I'm interested, right? Because it's just very straight to the point. Avoid stories. So another thing is, your pitch deck. Okay, I'm going to share a link to a resource that I have. Let me share before I forget. Okay. Okay. So this is going to help you. Copy link. Chat. Yeah. So what we have here is like different names or different contacts to investors. So, you would see what their interest is. You can't be talking to me about edtech when what I'm interested in investing is fintech. You can't be talking to me about agrotech when what I'm interested in talking about, right, or investing in is edtech, right? So you just need to, this link sort of has like a different names, different contacts, right? So some venture capitalists that are willing to actually invest in young startups. So another thing I want to talk about is being persuasive. So your pitch deck must be persuasive. Like, so you want to use certain keywords or buzzwords like, oh, I'm building the first products in Africa, or I'm building the first health tech in Africa. All of those lines, my friends will say it's called punchlines. So you need to have, because those are the things that would drag me, right? I want to take a closer look into your product. I want to take a closer look into the rest of the information you have to give, really. So it's very important that you are, persuasive in your pitching. Another thing is using data and evidence. So, you're not just telling stories, right? Try to use pictures, right? I saw what was attached to the email. If time permits, we would be able to give some comments to the documents. But yeah, just make sure that you're able to use data. So according to World Bank, this data, of course, the data has to be relevant to you. So you're not just writing data because we want you to use data, right? So one of my friends that is looking to starting a recycling business, for instance. So one of the pictures he has in his speech deck was a picture of a dirty environment that has lots of plastic, right? He's looking into recycling plastic. What am I trying to say is that picture in itself says it says everything. Okay, you are passionate about this, you have a concern around this, and then you are looking to create a solution around this. Pretty much that's it. So try to use data, try to use evidence, speak facts, you're not just saying stories. It's very important, picture as a way to sit in people's mind longer than your test. That's what we say. Then another thing is telling your story. It's your story. It's your product. You need to be able to tell it in a convincing manner, right? It has to be convincing. It has to be engaging, right? So when I say tell stories, I'm not asking you to tell me, oh, how you've been about this product for 20 years, you've been thinking about it. I don't need all of the story as an investor. So what you want to talk about is, making sure that you don't lose me in your conversation while you're talking or while you're describing it, while you're describing your product in your pitch deck, right? So your story has to be very engaging, it has to be very captivating, and it has to be very convincing. Right? Why would I, as an investor, want to invest in product A? Because it's coming from you, and not want to invest in product B, right? How convincing you are, how you're able to tell your story. And then, of course, lastly, for your pitch deck, make sure that you edit, re-edit, and edit again. It's very important, right? I've reviewed some pitch deck before because I'm a consultant, before, and I'm like, no, right? So you want to avoid unnecessary. These are some of you just really want to avoid some unnecessary, oh, this is off. I don't want to be part of this. If they cannot pay, attention to something as detailed, as little as grammatical errors, formatting, and all of that. So make sure that you re-edit, you format, you proofread, whatever adjective that you can think of, right? It's very important. I think I also have another resource for some templates that you can use for your pitch deck. I stumbled on it recently, and I think it's very resourceful. Yeah, I've shared it with you. Yes. So I don't know if I'm supposed to talk about some of the capital raise options. I know, I see in the slide that some strategies that you could use were actually listed in the slide, but I don't know if I should just talk briefly. Of course, that you know that there's angel investors, which are the HNI guys, the I network individuals, you have the venture capitalists. But one very that I'm beginning to love recently, I think, is crowdfunding. How many of us know Aramide on LinkedIn? Aramide literally built a school, right? She went to Harvard via crowdfunding. She was able to pull funds. She was able to pull funds just by, asking people to invest in her, right? And, there's a lot of, trick to crowdfunding though, but I mean, I feel like it's just a very beautiful strategy. Like really, if you can tell your story in a very convincing way, people would invest in you. You'll be amazed at how people will come through for you. Another one that I know is Chess and Slum. I mean, of us know Chess and Slum. I mean, that guy literally raised his capital to start that project or that initiative to fund it on Twitter. It just kept talking about it. Oh, we can make chess this, we can do this. And, it's very beautiful to see how people came through for him. He was able to open like a GoFundMe account and people said, sending money to him. And one thing crowdfunding does is, aside from accountability, right? People just want you to be accountable to them. There's no need for thinking about dividend, how to pay them back, what would their return look like, what percentage am I giving to them, right? Just have a compelling story and gain the public trust, right? You don't want to crowdfund and now run away. So you want to crowdfund and make sure that you're actually accountable to these people, right? And that's it. I think another very good example is MTN, right? MTN did this and nobody was even talking about it. I'm like, oh, okay, that was nice. Like, that's a very solid strategy. MTN wanted to go PLC, and what he had to do was to make his shares available to everybody. So if I have as little as 50,000, I could buy into MTN shares. That's a very good strategy to crowdfund. You needed money, and then he made his shares available to everybody, such that you even had to peg it, I think, at 250K or thereabouts, so that the big guys will not buy everything and leave the small guys, right? Everybody, was able to, get, as little as you can afford of MTN shares. And that's a very good strategy to crowdfund, to raising funds, really. So like I said, what people just want from you is be accountable. So you keep coming back to them to tell them, oh, this is the update now. Oh, let's say for instance, you did a crowdfund to build a school. Oh, okay, we've been able to build to this extent. Oh, this is what we are looking to do now. It just sort of shows to people how passionate you are about what you're actually pursuing and how intentional you are as well. And you're also very sincere. So when you come tomorrow to make a call for any other, crowdfunding for any other initiative that you have, people are willing to, right? Because they see that over the years, you've been able to build a track record of being an accountable person. So yes, I'll speak to pitching, I'll speak to some of the strategies to raising funds. I'm happy to take any questions that you have. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mary. Thank you very much for that detailed presentation on pitching and also comments on negotiation as well. I'll be calling on our fourth mentor, on the call, Esther Eme.
Hello, everyone. How's your day
Good
going?
afternoon.
So lovely to be here again. All the mentors have spoken, and it has just been wonderful. I've learned a lot from every single person that has spoken, and I think most of the things I'm going to say are going to overlap with what they said. But I'll encourage you that as you listen, don't look at it as a repetition. see it more as emphasis. And none of the things being shared here are being shared for the sake of just sharing, but they will transform the way you do business. Okay, so let me see. I have a slide. Let me see how I can share it on the screen. Sorry, just give me a moment.
You know, school implications for selling shares.
How do I do this? Share screen. Okay. Okay. Shall we do this? Okay. Sorry, give me a moment. Okay. Okay. Still trying to figure it. I'm sorry. I'm still trying to figure this out. Okay. 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 Can everyone see the slideshow?
Yes, ma'am.
Hello, can you see the slideshow?
Yes, we can see your slides now.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Okay, so everything we are talking about today, thankfully, is something that comes naturally to us, right? There's no project that you start that you don't need capital. And sometimes when we think of capital, we only think about the money that is needed to grow a business, to start a business, to scale a business. But capital goes beyond money, right? Capital is every kind of asset. It's human assets, right? It's physical asset, machinery, everything that you need to be able to derive a value, to be able to derive vested interest in a project. And sometimes that may be an intangible asset. Sometimes that may be a physical asset. Sometimes that may be human beings. Sometimes that may be some kind of license, some kind of expertise. So it's important when you're trying to start a business to know what kind of asset, what kind of capital you need to start it, right? Let's go to the next slide. Yes. So this is what we're already talking about. You have physical assets, you have property, you have plants, you have machinery. There are times when you need to start a business that if you're only looking for money, you may find out that you were shopping for the wrong kind of capital. There are some businesses that you need some kind of scientific know-how that may go beyond money invested. Like the money that you have for the business may not be as helpful as having proper expertise. There are some industries that you may need a person. I was speaking yesterday with a friend of mine about, for example, mining. There are some communities that if you needed to mine natural resources there, a person which is like the gatekeeper to that community will be more of an asset to you than having hundreds of millions of naira, because you would go round and round in circles, not being able to effectively apply your resources because you don't have the right person. So that is the way capital is, first of all, identifying what you need to be able to gain more value, what you need to be able to derive the interest that you have in a project. Now, I've linked here an article that I think you'll find very resourceful if you go through it. Most times when we're thinking about capital, when we're thinking about starting a business or starting a venture, there is the fear that there is not enough money, right? Who would want to finance this idea I have? Who would be interested in going alongside with me? But the thing that we've seen this age in research is that capital is not what is scarce. On the contrary, there has never been a time in human history when capital has been as abundant as it is right now. Investors are constantly looking for something to put their money in. People are having diverse portfolios. There's no want of a desire to invest. So I think that's the first thing. When you're seeking an investment, should give you confidence that, okay, I'm not the first of all, to be looking for this. And people are actually looking for me. People are actually looking to invest in me. People are looking for something that can profit them. The only thing is, because there is so much capital, there's so much desire to invest in something, it's quite competitive to get an investment. And you may not get the investment you want, not because you don't have a good idea or not because you don't have the resources you need, but if you're unable to communicate your idea properly, if you're unable to communicate your interest properly, if you're unable to communicate your business properly, you may feel like it's impossible to raise capital, whereas it is like food that is in front of your mouth. It's just to know how to open your mouth and eat it, right? So in raising capital, most times we're thinking of who do I know, but it is better and it is more important to settle down and to really define what your business is and how you communicate that to your prospective investors. So in communicating that, you have to be able to by yourself identify, what do you need, right? What do you need? You have to narrow it down to what exactly you need to hit the ground running. What do you have that you can leverage on, right? When you're looking for an investment, something you can use to leverage, you can use, an idea is good, but everybody has ideas. So sometimes when you're asking for an investment, you have to be able to show proof of concept, which means you have to be able to show that, okay, this market research is lovely, but sometimes you have to be able to show that this thing can actually stand. And that sometimes means that you have invested some things into the business yourself, and you have proved that with the little you have invested, this was what was able to come out of it. So you are able to leverage what you have to invite someone to invest what they have. Now, how much cost are you willing to incur, right? In getting an investor, are you willing to trade off ownership of the business? Are you willing to get into a long-term loan? Are you willing to give up royalties or sales on your product? What is it that you're willing to give? You have to be able to determine what is the most you can give, because people that invest, they wouldn't mind swallowing you up. They wouldn't mind, they don't have a passion for your business, not everyone. So they wouldn't mind swallowing your business if it means they can, profit. So you have to be able to determine how much cost am I able to carry on, and how much will I be able to carry on and still be able to get my interest out of this business, because business is about profit. So if you go into it without counting the cost, you may end up just doing a cycle of labor without having anything to show for it. So you must be able to define, okay, how much is too much? Okay, if you are going to get a loan, how much interest on the loan is too much that it cuts into your own interest? If you're going to give up equity for your business, how much are you willing to lose? How much control are you willing to lose? How much of your ownership are you willing to have diluted so that you can get this? So these are things that you have to research on, and you have to be prepared to communicate it. You have to be able to communicate what is the lifespan of your business, what is the growth prospect of your business. All of that, you have to be able to know it. And I read here that when success is when opportunity is met by preparation. I've also linked an article that I think you would find very helpful. Okay, very helpful. Okay. So yes, going to negotiations. Everything in life is about negotiation. So looking at the topic, effective business negotiation, there's a tendency to, when it's business negotiation, and you have to put yourself out there, to feel heavy and like, oh, so much pressure about it. But it's about realizing that everything in life is about negotiation. So it's as simple as that. And even before anyone was educated, people were always making negotiation and carrying out that mindset that at every point in life and at every point in the business, not just at the point of capital, but even continuing on in the business, you're going to have to keep making negotiations and having that mindset that, okay, I need to develop my skill as a negotiator. Whether it's in a relationship, you need to be able to make good negotiations. You need to be able to know what to trade off and what you cannot trade off on, right? So when you're setting the ground for negotiations, you have to be able to do a mental draft, of your mindset going in. And I think these are some of the things I've already spoken on. You have to be able to define what is your own personal vested interest. Some people's interest in a project they are going to do, it may be a sense of goodwill, profit, right? Everybody's interest is different. But then if you're doing a project for goodwill, you wouldn't want an investor who would come and make it about money. This is now even speaking aside from money. So you have to be able to determine, okay, that would help you to understand what kind of investment, what kind of investor you're looking for, because there are so many types of investors. Capital is not scarce. Investors are not rare. It's about knowing who you are and what you bring to the table and what you're willing to trade off, right? You have to be able to estimate your costs. You have to be able to, and by cost, if we're speaking purely financially, you have to be able to determine what is your weighted average cost of capital, which in finance is either how much cost are you willing to incur, whether in debt financing or whether in equity financing. That is, how much are you willing to give up in paying your shareholders, or how much are you willing to give up in paying interest, right? You have to consider those things and consider also control. You have to evaluate the risks of going into the business, because you don't want to be pitching an idea to someone and it's your investor that helps you to see that you have not really considered this risk. And then you are flustered, and then you are positioned with a lower hand in the negotiation because it looks like you don't know what you're doing, or maybe you need someone to step in and take control, right? You have to be able to prospect your return on investment. There's nobody who wants to just join you in laboring for no reason. You have to make it worth their while. You have to be able to design an operation plan so that when looking at your idea, someone can see how the day to day can go smoothly, right? You don't want to say something that is so in the air that it's unreasonable to invest in it, right? You also have to show that you are able to scale your idea. You have to show a roadmap on how you intend to scale this idea from maybe retained earnings or as you grow your consumer base. How do you plan on scaling this idea? There's nobody, babies are cute, but if you had a cousin maybe who gave birth to a child, you visited the house 10 years later, the child hasn't grown. It's no longer cute, it's now traumatic, right? Nobody, no matter how cute or an idea, it becomes annoying, it becomes tiring, right? And then also I put here that you have to be able to create an exit or transition plan. And there are some people that are not interested in finance, in accounting. You have the principle of going concern, which means that a business should operate like it will run in perpetuity, which means it will have no end. But realistically, there are times when there are ideas that have a particular time frame. For example, during the COVID period, the lockdown, there are people who started businesses on face masks and hand sanitizers. That is not going to be a business that will be successful for a decade, because we expect that, okay, COVID should come to an end, there should be an intervention, there should be a vaccine at some point. So, but within that period, it is wise to invest in a face mask business because people are buying. That's the point of a boom, right? But what is the plan after this lockdown period? How do we transition as a business entity into other streams of income? Because you always have to be prepared for contingencies, and sometimes when it's not even a contingency, it's something that is unavoidable. You have to be able to show your investors that you are prepared to be able to exit profitably or transition profitably. You don't want things to just happen to them and they're just, oh, we're not making any money again. What do we do? What do we do? And then they are tied down with cartons and cartons and millions of face masks that nobody wants anymore, right? You have to be able to know when it is appropriate to end a particular business venture. Now that was on doing the mental, draft of your idea, structuring that. But then you come to when you want to communicate it in a negotiation. And in business analysis, we have what is called a business case, right? It is the how do I put this? It is the like a written document that describes the entire life, the intention, the goal of a project. And in business, particularly, you would have a business plan. I heard the lady, Miss Mary, she spoke about a pitch deck, and I really enjoyed that because a pitch deck is a more summarized version of a business plan. And I fear that in Nigeria, we have a mentality of doing research to fulfill all righteousness, right? Most people, their dissertations, their research papers, their assignments, they just do it so that it's not that they did not do it. Well, you can't go into business or looking for an investor with that kind of mindset. Your business plan is as much for you as it is for your investors, right? You have to be able to not only know these things, you have to embody these things, right? And I put here some sections that are very important when you're writing your business plan. Some people, they just look for someone else that can just write a business plan for them so that they will have something to submit and then they can just go ahead and because they feel like they are the more sales-driven, action-driven people. So they're not really invested in understanding the business plan, right? But it's important that even if you get someone who is better or more proficient in articulating your plan, you yourself should be invested in understanding it. Why? Because you have to, one of the things here, one of the sections here that is so important is your market analysis and your competition. You also have your industry overview, your landscape. Why is what you are doing different from what other people are doing? Why is the market not overly saturated? Why is this not just another idea? There's a statement that every time you get an idea, 7 other people get the idea at the same time. There's a saying like that. So why is your own idea different, right? What makes you have to be able to structure your idea? Sometimes there are even times when you come in to a business with a plan, like an idea of what you would like to do. But when you do research, you are able to adapt your operations to be more profitable. So in your business plan, you should have an executive summary. You should have an overview of your industry and the landscape. You should do an in-depth market analysis research. You should be able to understand your competition. Now, this is not just for formal this is not just for formal applications for investments. You can have a more informal business plan, which is I think of a pitch deck. But these are the things that you have to have in mind. You have to be able to know what your sales plan is, your marketing plan is, your operations plan, your financial plan. And like Miss Mary said, with your appendices and exhibits, it's all about showing supportive evidence, supportive data, pictures, things to show your investors that you understand where this is headed and you're prepared to handle whatever may arise, because people need to be confident that this person that I'm giving my money to, Sabi, not the one that when I give you my money now, for example, in agriculture, you give your money to somebody and maybe a local farmer, and you don't have maybe an agro specialist that is also on the plan. He starts to tell you that, well, rain did not fall. What did you want me to do? Well, sun did not shine. What did you want me to do? There was this, there was that, pest, fire, this and all of that. Well, is this your first time farming? You should have known that. You should have known that that's a possibility. You should have communicated it to me. You should have known the risk of all of that, right? So you don't want to sound like you don't know what you're doing or you're a confused person. Okay, so like I said earlier, there are different kinds of investors, and it's important to understand the different types so that when you're shopping for an investor, you get one that fits you appropriately. I saw in the slides that were shared earlier, most of the ones here, I believe everyone here is conversant with. You have bootstrapping, which is your own personal saving. Bootstrapping comes from the idea of wearing your shoes by yourself, right? What do you have? Your personal savings, gifts from friends. You can take a mortgage on your house, your cash, whatever you can do to raise money, right? We're speaking of raising capital. You have micro loans. How do you source for loans, small loans to start a business? There are different microfinance banks that are giving loans, and yeah. Miss Mary spoke about crowdfunding. That is one that is a newer method of raising capital, but it's still very effective. You have GoFundMe campaigns and all of that. Usually, it's more popular with social entrepreneurs. When you raise causes that resonate with other people, people are more likely to give to that. But if you say now that you want to start selling, except maybe you're a charity case, but if you're just doing something for your own profit, well, I mean, it's worth a try. But I know that social entrepreneurs have more success with crowdfunding than other more purely profit oriented business. Then you have angel investors, which are high net worth individuals who would like to have some sense of would like to have some portion of equity in exchange for their investment. We have venture capitalists. They are similar to angel investors, but they are more likely to deal in terms of high interest debt. You have small business, and these sources of investments, these investors, they're not only for starting a business, they're also for scaling a business, right? So you have small business administrators, administration, which is government programs that are there to support small and medium-sized businesses through loans and all of that. We also have purchase order financing. I noticed that this was missing from most of the other slides. And this is normally where there is someone in between the supplier and the business, or the supplier himself can. Normally, it's a financier that is in between the supplier and the business, and he would pay the supplier. The supplier would bring the goods. When you sell the goods, you pay the financier, and Yeah, so it's a strategic and a very smart way to raise capital, because as people are buying, you're able to pay for it. As people are buying, you're able to pay for it, right? Then you also have contests. I think everyone here is conversant with the Tony Elumelu Foundation and things like that, that, they would do something to support um, businesses that are starting, businesses that show high growth perspective and things like that. You could apply for that and you could win. There are even things that are specific to women businesses. There are things that are specific in the US, perhaps, to Black-owned businesses. So there's something for everyone. And yeah, it's all about knowing what is available to you as an entrepreneur and what are the opportunities in your industry. You also have product pre-sales, and this goes into things like Kickstarter. You could have a Kickstarter campaign whereby you design a product, you put it out there. The product has not yet been developed, but people order for the product before the product is even out. When they order for it, the money they use to order it, you use it to create the product, you sell to them, you make your own profit. You don't have any stale stock on your hand, and you've taken out the risk of, you know, having all these goods and needing to market it, needing to do that, and then just being strapped for cash, and just a risk of not having liquidity in your business because you're so trapped with all your goods in. Okay, so let me rush through the rest. Then you have strategic partners. Strategic partners are people that not only contribute financially, they may contribute in the sense of their network, their expertise. There are some people that are marketing icons, right? And sometimes what you need in your business is not necessarily money. You need someone who can open the doors for you to the places that your business needs to enter. So those are strategic partners. There are some people that maybe an endorsement from them would help, or maybe their knowledge, their intellectual property, their trademark would help your business to be able to scale. And then you have incubator programs, which are for startups. So I think this is like the last slide so that we can round this up. So there are many qualities that a great negotiator must have. And I believe all the previous speakers have touched on it. I heard some from Mrs. Teresa, which I really loved, emotional intelligence and all of that. There's so many, actually, so many, but I have made it concise so that you are able to remember it. And not only remember it, when you're going into a meeting to ask for an investment, you are able to keep it in front of your mind. And this is how I remember it. Most times investors are looking for a business with a certain spark about them, a certain je ne sais quoi. I don't know if I said it well, but it's something special, something that makes you different, right, from the rest of the bunch. These are the qualities. Yeah, sometimes you're negotiating with someone, I don't know what it is about that person, but it's just so, convincing, so persuasive, right? It's a spark. And that's the acronym I'll give you for being a great negotiator. So S stands for strategy and smart trade-offs. When you're going into a negotiation, you have to have a strategy going in, which means you have to be prepared. You have to be able to, like playing chess, you have to be able to anticipate what your investor is going to ask, what he's going to need, what are the questions he's going. So before he asks a question, you've already gone to it. Before he needs to know something, you've already hinted at it. And the more you keep giving him what he wants before he asks of it, okay, I can give my money to this person, right? So you have to have strategy going in and smart trade-offs. You have to be prepared to give a little, right? And to know where to give, where it will. For example, there are some times that maybe you are pricing something in the market, right? We said negotiation, it goes beyond corporate finance. Negotiation goes even into the market, right? Sometimes you're negotiating on, some people don't understand this about Nigerian women. Sometimes it's not even about getting it cheaper. Sometimes it's just about winning the negotiation, right? Say, how much is your tomato? Say 200 naira. okay, I have 200 naira, but give me 180, right? Sometimes you may not be able to give 180 because of your cost price. Okay, madam, I will give you Jara, right? So you need to know where to trade off. Sometimes it's about pampering the person's ego, giving the person a sense of control or whatever. So strategy and smart trade-offs are important for a great negotiator. Then another thing is you have to be, and this is still building on strategy, be prepared, be patient, and be persuasive, right? Be prepared. We've spoken about this over and over. Be patient. Don't feel annoyed. Like Mr. Lisa said, there sometimes that someone may there was a deal that there was an investor. I have a small business I run, and there was someone who wanted to invest in the business, and what she asked for in return, I felt insulted, right? But there's no need to let your ego lead in a negotiation, right? Because like I've done all this work, this groundwork building up, and then you just think you just want to come and take everything off of me. Be patient. There are even sometimes that going back again to the market illustration, you may go to the market, they'll say, you say, how much is this? Should person say 15,000? You say, give me for 2.5. You know it's not 2.5, right? But you just want to go to the extreme so that you can have enough wiggle room. So be patient. Don't react, and be persuasive, right? Then be attentive. This is A. So that was for P. Now A, be attentive, be assertive, and be adaptable. Be attentive means that you listen keenly, right? But you don't trade off being assertive because you're attentive. So as much as you're willing to, work with them, you have to still be able to stand your ground and say, this is as far as I go. And also, even when you're being assertive, be adaptable. That is, make room to move for them, move a little, let them move a little. And then finally, calculate, communicate, and collaborate. When you're negotiating with someone and the person sees that you're making calculated responses, person knows that the person will act offended, but will know that you are trustworthy, which means you're also going to defend his own investment moving forward. Communicate and collaborate. Look out to work with people. Some people are just looking to get people's money and just be in control. They don't want anybody's stock. They don't want anybody say in what they are doing. It's my business. You just give me your money. I'll give your own out. No, you have to have a spirit of collaboration. So thank you. I hope this gives you confidence to pursue your dreams and have good success in your endeavors. Looking forward to your questions and your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Esther Eme, and for that beautiful presentation and the slides. I hope we get the chance to share your slides also, and I will plead that you share your slides on the chat box so we can all download. And also for Miss Teresa, I requested for her slides earlier. I would also like if she share her slides to us. I don't think she's in the call anymore. So thank you very much once again, Miss Esther. And Miss Mary is also on the call. Mr. Matt has left the call. So we only have two mentors. Mr. George is not on the call. So before we move on to our mentees presentation, we'll be taking picture time, while I also encourage our mentees on the call to prepare their live questions for the question and answer session. So I encourage everyone to put on their videos. We'll be taking quick screenshots of ourselves for our social media posts later on today. Thank you very much. Okay, we can smile for the camera, please. Thank you. I can't see everybody's video. Please, I'm waiting for those of us that haven't turned on our videos. Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you very much, especially to those that are smiling. Okay. Yeah, I've taken some screenshots. Abdurazak can smile for a very long time. Thank you very much. All right. Okay, we'll be taking our mentees presentation. I hope the presenters are ready. I'm calling on the presenters to make their presentation. Kindly know that you have 7 minutes to present, so be brief and quick. So I'll call on the first presenter. If the first presenter is ready, you can share your slides and start your presentation now. Esther Nicholas, are you presenting? Okay, I learned our two presenters are Aishat Akande, she's not on the call, and Sally Woliat. I think Sally Woliat is on the call, so you can start your presentation. She's also not on the call. Okay. While we're waiting for our presenters, I think we can start taking the questions. I have some questions here. So I'll be asking those questions to our mentors. Okay, the first question, I think is for Miss Mary. How do the startup product or service help to address unmet market needs? Miss Mary can go first, then Mr. Esther can also contribute.
Okay, sorry, I might not be able to put on my video, but if I got the question correctly, you said, how does a startup business meet market needs? Is that what you said? That's the question. Oh, okay. Of course. I mean, before you start, the moment you concede an idea to start up a business, it means you have seen a problem, right? It means you have seen a gap. And sometimes it's probably not because there is no solution in the market solving it yet. It could also be because you want to better, or you want to better improve on a particular feature. So let me give a bit of context. So if, for instance, I want to start a fintech tomorrow, I mean, right now we have fintechs that thrive in payments gateway, credits. We have a couple of them. So if tomorrow I want to say my own fintech company should address the problem of thinking. Let's say I'm looking to address the problem of paying for your health service, for instance. Okay, thank you, Jesus. You want to pay for your health service. I mean, we already have fintech companies or fintech hub that solve that problem of paying utility bills, right? Or bills payments, but maybe not the ones that are specifically meeting paying your health bills, right? So that means you are coming to improve on that feature, right? So, I mean, before you start a business at all, because it takes a lot of effort building the app, having a business case and all of that, it takes a lot of resources, you know, putting into it. So you need to be sure that, and that's why I speak to being able to express what your problem statement is. What are you looking to solve, right? What problem have you seen, right, in the market, or what problem have you seen around? So what are you looking to solve? What do you think? How do you think people can, how do you think you can actually provide a solution, right, that people can plug into? So yes, I don't know if I've been able to answer that question. Hello.
Thank you
Can
very
you have
much. Yes, thank you very much, Miss Mary, for that answer, for that wonderful answer. I will also call on Ms. Esther to contribute if she has anything to say.
Okay. So I'm reading the question, how do startup products or services help address unmet market needs? Well, I agree with everything that Miss Mary, I'm sorry, has said. If I'm to add to it, I think like she said, most times when we're thinking about startups, we're thinking, and just with the question of unmet market needs, we're thinking about disruption. And what I feel like is a misunderstanding with disruption, and I think I shared this in the last quarter also, is that it's not about doing something that has not been done before. There is nothing that there is not a product there to meet the need. There's nothing that is improving on what is already there. So it's about doing like a successful disruptive startup is one that is able to identify where things can be done not only better but cheaper. So it's about offering something that gives more value at less cost to people. So how do startup products or services help to address unmet market needs? It's about doing appropriate research, and it's about knowing where to come in into the market, because most times as a startup, you have to compete with big market players, with people that have been there longer, people who have greater margins of scale, people who have greater access. So you have to be able to enter in a way that you don't seem as much as a threat, but you are able to usurp most of the markets. And that often comes at just doing a little better at a less price. So that's how I think startups can help to address unmet market. I don't know. I hope that helps.
Thank you very much to our both mentors for the answer to that first question. I'll be taking the second question from Ms. Esther. How does one handle an effective negotiation by maintaining initial offers to investors and counter offers?
I'm not sure I understand this question. How does one handle an effective negotiation by maintaining initial offers? So help me to clarify this question. Is it someone who has multiple bids from investors?
I think it's someone who is trying to handle counter offers with his current investors, right? That's why we have initial offers and trying to handle the initial offer with counter offer. Maybe there's like an interception between the two offers.
Okay, I'm not sure about that, because when I think of counter offers, I think, okay, maybe your investor is reaching too much in the sense of what he would like in exchange for his investment, and then you make a counter offer to him as to say, how much of your position are you willing to shift to accommodate me so that we can work together? So I don't know if I should answer from that, or if you're handling a negotiation that has bids from different investors. Well, if you're handling a negotiation that has bids from different investors at the same time, it's now you're in a favorable position, because you just have to determine who gives you more of what you want, right? Who is a better strategic partner, or who is more lenient in the cost they would like you to incur. So if it's multiple bids, this question is referring to, is a sweet position to be because you have options now. But if it's about counter offers, like someone offers you an investment and you give a counter offer, it's as simple as being able to define what is non-negotiable for you, what is non-negotiable, and being able to communicate that. Like I said earlier in the slide, being able to be assertive yet adaptable. So I think I'll answer from those two positions, but let me hear what the other mentor has to say. Maybe she has a better understanding of the question.
Okay, let's take the contribution on the question from Mary.
So I honestly don't understand the question myself, or I'm hoping that what Ms. Esther said and addressed it, except I really do not understand the question, sorry.
I also call on the group leader, Onyekachi Catherine, to show more light on that question. She sent the question earlier today. So I'll call on the mentee that asked that question to see how she can elaborate it so our mentors can answer the question while I'm taking the last question for today. Miss Mary can go first on this one. How can a fintech thrive if it raises capital through IPO and the shares are undersubscribed? Miss Mary, did you get that question? Can we hear me? Miss Mary, are you on the call? Okay, Miss Esther can take the question.
Okay. Can a fintech thrive if it raises capital through an IPO and the shares are under subscribed? Well, an IPO is not something that companies go into light-handedly. There's a lot of preparation that goes into IPOs, and there often is a huge team of experts behind it because it's imperative that it is done properly and it achieves the purpose for which it was initiated. So it's quite a bad look if an IPO is unsuccessful, because it shows that either you didn't have the right team, you didn't employ the right people, maybe your valuation was off, maybe you valued yourself, you as a business far higher than your worth, right? There was not enough or appropriate communication of the details of the shares, or there was not enough marketing done, there was not enough branding done. There's a lot that goes into an IPO. So if it's unsuccessful, it can be damaging to the brand because it doesn't read well in the sense of the talent you have on your team or your ability to be prepared to handle critical investment milestones. But nevertheless, can a fintech thrive? Yes, of course it can thrive. And there are still other opportunities to raise capital, even if the shares during the initial public offering, even if it was undersubscribed, there are still opportunities to raise capital outside that event. But it's not something that is not a good thing to happen to a fintech. especially because fintech companies already have a reputation for not um, being stable. So if already as a fintech, you're already trying to show that you are trustworthy, you're trying to show proof of concept here, having a failed IPO will not help, but it's still possible to raise capital through other means. And I think that was the point of showing all the different means that you can raise, not just capital in general, but you can still raise equity, you know. Yeah, maybe an angel investor can still invest in the or a venture capitalist or yeah. So there are still other ways to raise capital. You can still get debt financing. There are so many opportunities, but generally it will not help. So it's better to do the right work, to do the groundwork and to be prepared going into an IPO instead of dealing with the effects of a failed one.
Thank you very much, Ms. Esther, for that answer. I don't know if Miss Mary got the question before her network threw her out.
Yes, yes, thank you. I got the response. I think that pretty much speaks to it. But I also need to say that an undersubscribed IPO does not necessarily mean that the company is doomed to fail, right? So you might want to do some, communicating with your investors, say, communicate it, and then you know how to address the concerns, right? Like she said, there's a lot of work that goes into IPO. So you might want to sort of change do some restructuring here, maybe. Like I said, communicate with your investors as well, right? Just making them aware of the situation at hand so they can know where to step in if they can too. So, and you might also want to focus on customer acquisition, right? It's very important that you focus on gaining the loyalty of your customers back, or the trust, right? you want to focus on gaining that. It's very essential for companies' long-term growth, right? And ultimately, I think another thing is you have to be very patient. It might take a while to coming back, right? But you have to be very, very patient and focus on, focus on its core business, right? What is your core principal activity? And yes, so that's pretty much my contribution.
All right, thank you very much. Both mentors on the call. I don't know if any mentee has question. You can raise your hand and I'll call on you to ask the question before we end the session for today. Any live question from our mentees on the call before we go? I can't see any hands raised, so that tells me that after this session, every mentee on the call will successfully raise capital and also negotiate effectively in our various field of practice. So thank you very much once again, Miss Mary, for coming. I know today is the first time she's joining us on Jiipcc Mentorship and Internship Program. Thank you very much, Ms. Esther, for seeing you again today and learning from your vast wealth of knowledge. Thank you very much to all our mentees on the call, and have a lovely weekend. Have a wonderful day ahead.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me. Bye.
All right, bye-bye.